Produced by Audavita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.
This is Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Body with Dr. Schuyler. Discover how your thoughts manifest disease and what you can do about it. Here's your host, Dr. Schuyler.
Hello, beautiful souls. Today, the topic is a pretty scary topic for me to talk about, but it's time to get the big pink elephant out of the therapy room and discuss it because it can have crushing, long-lasting effects. And it is, are you trauma bonded to your child? And I've given you a lot to digest over the past episodes, and I'm challenging your thoughts and your parenting style and your attachment style. And it's a very humbling experience. And this is going to go into this unspoken topic as therapists we don't even talk about in public. But here I go. Told you all this book is going to be raw, real, and exposes some pretty hidden science secrets and the concepts of disease. So this is just super uncomfortable as a therapist for me to talk about because it just is, but it is what it is. So it's not as if caring for your sick child is enough. Now you got the shrink telling you via the podcast, hey, you got another issue going on here. So it's this whole new batch of complex dynamics that can occur while your child is healing from chronic illness or has even healed. And how some parents feel when their prayers have been answered and how their child is healed. It really may surprise you and hit you on some deep, hidden, secret level that while raising this sick child, parents can begin to form a trauma bond with their child, which can lead to what's called enmeshment, where family members are emotionally reactive to one another and intertwined, and it can be a maladaptive or unhealthy ways. So what happens after a child has been sick and healed, I often see a parent's anxious attachment style comes back as they're trying to recreate this trauma bond. And while the child is sick, what can happen sometimes is the child can feel emotionally parentified. Now, this can happen even if your child does not have anxiety or gut issues or autoimmune. This is just a parenting behind the scenes look into some dark stuff. So when a child feels they have to care for their parents' emotional need, an example could be a mother might tell her teenage daughter about her issues with her husband in hopes to feel connected and not so alone. So as a single, intentionally unattached mom, I'll go ahead and, as always, you just go ahead and point the fingers back at me. I've done this to my own kids. My girls have gotten the tea and the tears on more times than they probably should have. And living with 3 females, when mama gets taken out, the whole tribe feels it. So be mindful when you're attacking a mother. She's got baby birds back at the nest to care for. And how you treat a mom is how you treat her children. So just to bring awareness to this is what I'm talking about here. A wounded mom seeks connection and sometimes this form of intimacy with her kids because she feels too ashamed to seek it elsewhere. And if you're feeling this, if you're feeling these words, then you know. And as we dive into the scary side of this parent-child bond, please know I am certainly not judging. So another common experience from feeling unneeded when they are sick and when they're transitioning to this healthy lifestyle as a parental role, it feels very similar to empty nester. You know, empty nester is more of a healthy phenomenon of what's my need, what's my purpose, what am I going to do now, what's my role? Well, if you take that and make it a little more maladaptive, a little more to the extreme end, that's a trauma bond. What am I going to do if my child gets better? They're not going to need me. They're not going to be able to depend on them. Who am I going to vent to? This thread of this bond begins to be put into question. So a trauma bond is an emotional connection that develops when 2 people based on shared traumatic experiences. The bond creates a sense of dependency or this intense emotional attachment. And this bond is formed from the survival mechanism. Now think, our sick kids are in survival mode. As a parent, you're in survival, fix them, heal them mode. So we're both in this primal survival response. And this is where individuals rely on each other for support and safety during difficult times. And it's so humbling and can be embarrassing that someone else knows all your flaws and then some exaggerated perspective based on your child's viewpoint. And, you know, as mental health therapists, we have all yelled or cussed or lost our cool or said something regrettable. And if any parent out there says they've never done that, I think they're fibbing. And it's awkward. But please know, I don't ever judge my patients' parents, and most therapists don't. So we know that parents are most of the time doing the best that they absolutely can. And it's not our place to judge your actions. It's not our place to judge your trauma bond. So our job is to provide safety and empowerment and to help our patients and their parents navigate the best that they possibly can. And it just becomes second nature not to judge. So as we dive into this uncomfortable yet very real phenomenon, I have noticed that the parent often becomes threatened by the therapist. And I remember seeing this early on when I was doing my practicum. And I was just so shocked every time I saw a parent pull a child out of therapy as soon as a child exposed these deep, dark secrets. And I thought, what in the world is going on? This is so weird. And then over the years, it's just kind of what parents do. They really start to feel threatened by the intimacy, the therapeutic intimacy that's formed between the child and the therapist. And as these skeletons come marching out of the closet, these parents are like, whoa, wait, I'm losing control over my child. Let me pull them out of therapy. And it's a devastating impact for the child, devastating to witness as a therapist. So for all the parents that are worried that therapists are judging you, we don't. We are simply taking data set points information from all the stories to best help treat your child. And I felt so compelled to include this in the chapter after, I witnessed this happen so many times, an unhealthy attachment style when the child is healed and the parents do not evolve with the child. The parents remain kind of emotionally stunted or stuck in their anxious attachment style. And if I had a nickel for every time a teen tells me they'll be better once they're out of their house, I'd be retired. So let's dive into this pink elephant in the therapy room that no one talks about, the enmeshment and fear that your child's therapist has some magical hold on your child. So when your child's has a sick kid and their condition improves, or even albeit they heal altogether, hopefully by listening to the podcast and nutrition and reading the book, you'll really start noticing that your child begins to heal. The parent becomes really unsettled in this new role of relationship because the child doesn't require as much time or attention or nurturing. And this becomes a hiccup when the parental insecurities arise. When the parent, out of desperation, were awakened to this realization, oh my gosh, someone else knows my parenting flaws. What do they think? My child must have told them horrible things about me. I feel like I'm losing control. Or my child is more bonded to the therapist than me. And what's my role? My kid's getting better. What if they don't need me as much? And these thoughts are normal. Absolutely normal. Nothing's wrong. We're just bringing awareness. So the challenging part is when the parent has this realization and their kids start getting to better and the kids start drawing boundaries. They start developing this secure attachment style. The parent feels very threatened and then pulls the kid out of therapy based on their own anxieties and fears. So this insecure, anxious parenting attachment style loops its way back around in cases after the child is healed and the parent has lost a sense of purpose or a sense they've lost control. And the parents not need as much as they once were. The child's self-efficacy has grown. Their anxiety may have decreased and their boundaries are drawn. They know how to protect their peace. And the parents may feel they've lost this connection or they feel intimidated in this inadvertent way and they begin to worry the child is more bonded to other people to them. So to ease the minds out there, if your child's in therapy, which I think every child should at some point in time have a safe adult to talk to with their therapist, but a safe adult outside of being parents, I think is critical. But to ease your minds, they are not more bonded to their therapist than you. Spending at most 1 hour a week, 4 hours a month does not erode the 24/7 years of parenting from the primary caregiver. It's not happening, y'all. And we are really, really trained in it not happening. So we know how to monitor what's called transference. Transference is this phenomenon when the patient or client seems to direct their feelings or desires onto the important figure, therapist. And it's in short when you project feelings like wanting to have a nurturing mother role, and the therapist is very nurturing and very empathetic. And a really super classic example is a patient or client fall in love with their therapist. Because the therapist, we don't argue, we don't fight. We're going to listen, we're going to validate, we're going to meet every need. We seem like the ideal human because we just meet every need you've ever had. So that's kind of a phenomenon that kids can experience too. Like, oh, that would be the ideal mother. I'll be the first one to say, my kids will be like, that's not the ideal mother. She yelled at me the other day for not putting the dishes away. So I really want to just emphasize that we are trained that when a child or patient begins to experience this transference, or whether it be through anger or rage or admiration or distrust or dependency, we know how to master this. We know how to redirect the bond. We know how to create this space for them to be able to work through it. But what I want to get into is when you as a parent feel insecure that you've lost control or influence over your child when they're leaving for college, or they start to feel better, or they're not as sick. And this kind of has some not so good outcomes for the child. As a child begins to get better, they reduce their anxiety, you're following the protocols, they begin to exhibit this stronger, greater sense of independence as they're exploring their new lives. And they may begin to distance themselves from you. And they may no longer need the secondary gains of your nurturing, your support, or are you okay? A good example is when I see parents starting to break the anxious attachment style, and the parent is actively working to be securely attached. The kid is still insecurely attached, and kid comes running back. Mama, where are you? Where are you? And the mom's like, I'm doing, laundry. Go back to what you're doing. And this happens in reverse. The kid is in therapy, gets better, and the parent keeps coming back. So this post-healing dynamics begins to happen, whether the parent is healing or the child is healing. The child's secondary gains may diminish, and the parent's role as caregiver begins to diminish. So this transition is really challenging. So understanding enmeshment is the key to this attachment style. And I really get into the evidence-based protocol of attachment style does impact a child's well-being. So enmeshment is where boundaries between individuals, parent, child, they start blurring. And in the context of chronic illness, enmeshment can develop as parents become deeply integrated into their child's care and emotional world. And parents have a hard time distinguishing their needs from their child's needs. Or the child may see the parent struggling and the child wants to meet their parent's need over overly empathetic. Enmeshment can hinder a child's development of autonomy and self-efficacy. So this child may feel overly dependent on the parent and they struggle to make these decisions, and the parents may experience heightened anxiety. And then after the child's gotten better, this can lead to overprotectiveness and difficulty accepting the new found health and independence. So the child may be wanting to explore new activities, and the enmeshed parent is struggling to let go. They don't want to see their child leave the house, and it's secret and it's shameful, and it begins to impact the child's like, well, wait, my mom's kind of upset that I'm always gone. And the child starts thinking, I don't want to upset my mom. And this drive that as parents, which is so natural, we want to feel needed. And when the child needs us less, we begin to lose that kind of tie that we have with them. And we might subconsciously start having resentment and fears. And this starts disrupting the family dynamics, and this starts shifting. And when the role that we are placed upon begin to shift, the dynamics begin to shift, and we begin to try to recreate the old dynamics which we are so used to. So the parents may feel lost or helpless or scared or even guilty. Like, I feel guilty that my kid's better, and I'm ashamed. I want them better, but I'm secretly kind of ashamed because I miss taking care of them. So as humans, we try to recreate trauma in our lives, so we try to resolve it. Our brain tries to close the loop of pain by recreating pain. So we begin to recreate our own personal wounds within the dynamics of our children. And this happens to all facets of life. So breaking the bond with our child as a parent can be very difficult, but I just want to point out, like, please don't judge yourself if you're noticing that, oh my gosh, like I secretly love how my kid needs me. I secretly love how much my kid depends on me. I secretly love like making my 22-year-old kid like breakfast, lunch, and dinner and doing their laundry. And I know he should do it on his own. Like, don't judge yourself or have harshness for it. It's, again, nothing's broken. We're just bringing awareness to areas that might need a little light. Understanding this dynamics of this bond is essential because it really impacts not only your well-being as a parent, but it impacts your child. So emotional symptoms of an overwhelming attachment, the parent feels indispensable to the child's well-being. So fear and anxiety become present, and both the child and the parent might feel this heightened anxiety about the child getting better, or the parent might get hypervigilance, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Are they going to get sick? Are they going to get sick? Are they going to get sick? Are you okay? Do you feel okay? And this sense of restlessness begins to ensue, and you keep waiting for the child to get sick. Are you okay? Are you okay? And the kid's like, no, I'm fine. Like, stop asking. And it's you trying to recreate this needing this bond, and this constant emotional strain of maintaining this bond starts to develop anxiety in the parent, and by the child, and the parent secretly begins to feel kind of guilt and ashamed. And, think about it. No one needs mama like a sick kid. And when our sick kids need us, it feels good. I love it. I love it. Well, there, I just said it. When one of them is sick, I really do love it. Like, mama, can you make me some soup? And it doesn't matter like how busy I am. My little mama heart melts, because I'm not going to have too many more times where my kids soon leave the house are going to be asking, mama, can you make me some soup? And I love how it feels to be needed. So that also dives into a whole separate disease process, Munchausen by proxy, or when we begin to make our children sick. And that is a whole separate episode. But on a very healthy, adaptive point of it, you can understand where I'm coming from. It feels good to be needed, and we like being needed. And when a child outgrows those needs, it can be very challenging. Conversely, something else that I see is when the child begins to get better, they panic. Oh my gosh, I've been depending on my parents all this time. All of a sudden, I feel better. I don't know if I can give this up. Like, I don't know if I want to leave mommy and daddy's house. So, catastrophic thinking always follows this. It's failure to launch. Like, I'm not ready to grow up kind of feeling. This disordered perceptions of reality kick in, this disordered perceptions of normalcy. And the parent may even find it difficult to envision your child a life without having this medical condition, because it's all you've ever known. It becomes part of your identity. Their disease, their anxiety, their autoimmune, their gut also becomes part of your anxiety. And I've heard so many stories, and I talk about this in 10 Things Your Kid Wish You Knew, and it's in the book. Collecting all the data set points, kids cannot stand it when you tell their stories to friends. And I always tell the kids, sometimes your parents are telling your stories of how sick you are because it makes them feel heard and makes them feel like supported. And it lets people know how much they went through. So there is an element to it's hard to let go of your needs and your role as a parent. So, Ella, my oldest, I talked about, had the arthritis, the spine and hips, and who was so sick at 14. Now she's 17 and she's just rocking it. She's a sophomore at the state college and getting her high school diploma or AA in the same day. So I knew trauma bond was a real thing, sitting in doctor's appointments, waiting for the MRI results, or in hospitals as she's passing the kidney stone. And we're both, at the bedside crying and sobbing in fear. Does she need surgery? And is she going to be able to go to homecoming? And all those, those connective moments based in fear. So knowing that as she's empowering herself and she's getting better, and just ordered 4-inch platform shoes last night, 2 little hippie shoes, I knew I had to start redefining what our relationship was. And we have a shared interest, and it's traveling. So I use the shared interest as a way to recreate our bond, that we can start bonding over traveling places, or we both love Chipotle or a really good cup of coffee. And playing cards, just something where we can bond over something other than illness, and taking a deep interest in what their interests are. And my daughter is a well-known theater geek and president of theater club, and wants to, do all these things with fashion design when it comes to period pieces. And to be frank, she'll never hear this. Maybe when she's 80 or something, she'll go back and listen. I have zero interest in that. It's just not where my head's at. But I absolutely listen to every single thing she says about it because it is so important to her. I want to bond with her interest, what her newfound joys are in life. So when you have a healed child and they start to speak up, it's your job to listen. There are consequences for not attempting to create these new neural pathways post illness. The trauma bond can limit a child's personal growth and development, and the overprotectiveness and dependency can hinder their developmental autonomy and self efficacy. It means failure launch. They can't live without you. And this really intense focus on managing their symptoms and managing their medication and making a doctor's appointment, this leads to isolation. The world revolves around medical issues, and the bond begins to form after that. So navigating these trauma bonds requires this delicate balance between empathy, support, independence, and basically ownership, complete ownership and accountability for, as a parent, you like how it feels when your child needs you, and that is okay. We just don't take it to a certain level where it begins to harm them, and understanding that these bonds can develop into unhealthy ways. So as your child begins to get better, hopefully as you're implementing automatic negative thoughts and attachment style and all these wonderful things that you're learning, and your child begins to get better, that you hold yourself accountability. And I like this new saying, accountability mixed with authenticity is the highest form of freedom. And we as parents, when we can be authentic with our dark needs and authentic with ourselves and hold ourselves accountable for how our role impacts our children, we begin to grow and evolve as humans ourselves. So focusing on these small victories and focusing on the effort over outcome, promoting their resiliency, and taking into fact that it's difficult not to be needed anymore. And who are we when we're not caring for our sick child? Who are we outside of being a parent? Who are we when we're outside of being a caregiver? And if you are a parent, and especially a mom who doesn't know your role outside of being a mother, self-care is the number one thing you can do for your child. When you can begin to find out what makes you tick outside of being a caregiver, and that you're not so emotionally dependent and your identity is not wrapped up in caring for your child. I'm not saying don't care for your child. What I'm saying is sometimes being overly involved in your child's life creates this enmeshment. And I was on a call yesterday with some GI psychs, and we all pretty much were in agreement that you can always pick out the enmeshment parents inside a doctor's office. So parents out there, if you think you're not enmeshed, ask your physician. They're going to tell you if you talk over your child in a doctor's appointment, if you don't like your child speak, if you're making demands on them, they're not with you, you're enmeshed. And that's okay. Nothing wrong with it. Just bring awareness to it. I hope this offers some insight, this very uncomfortable topic of trauma bonding with your child. Again, I'm kind of just giving a 30,000 foot view of these really unique topics found in the book, Empower Your Child to Heal. Launch date is October 20th, and it's pre-order on Amazon till then. And it really is going to dive into things that no one's talking about. That is actually the pink elephant in the therapy room, and really getting into things that are neuroscience based, attachment style based. It's the interplay between science and psychology. And it's time that we start figuring out why our kids are at epidemic levels sick, why autoimmune has 80 million people, why anxiety is doubled since COVID. Nutrition is fantastic, mold is fantastic, but it's time to start looking at answers that we don't have. You can get some free stuff on the website, drskyler.net. And from the depths of my soul, having a child that was sick and having myself that was sick, I hope that these words heal. Words can heal or words can harm. And I hope my words are bringing some healing and abundant blessings, everybody. Thank you for your time. I feel so grateful you have listened to the end. When we begin to understand how our body manifests stress, trauma, depression, anxiety, and even unexpressed emotions, we then create a space, a bandwidth in our minds to begin to heal our bodies. Healing is a decision, and I am grateful for yours. Abundant blessings, Dr. Skyler.
To learn more about the work Dr. Skyler is doing, please visit drskyler.net. That's DRSKYLER.net. And remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you like to listen.